Hello and welcome to Ask George, the final edition of this India versus England Test series. After day three, or part of day three of the fifth Test in Dharamshala. George, it was a quick game's a good game, but it went pretty quickly this morning.
Very. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say, really. Yes, it went extremely fast. You reach a tipping point quite often in these series. And once that happens, things do move very fast. And whether that happened with Joe Root's shot, attempted ramp in Rajkot or just after, I'm not sure. But in this game, England didn't score enough runs in the first innings. I thought they bowled all right. India probably actually got a pass score, but I think England were broken before they batted a second time, and it certainly looked like it. And at the same time, Ashwin is a wonderful bowler. I can't think of a better spinner I've ever seen with the new ball. And Kuldeep just goes from strength to strength.
Yeah, perhaps fittingly for a test played at the bottom of a mountain, England reached the bottom very, very quickly once this series had been wrapped up. Let's get some questions then submitted via our social channels using the hashtag AskGeorge, as you can do throughout the summer Test series when that kicks off. Stuart Akerster kicks us off by asking, when you cross the road, do you just back yourself to make the other side, or do you wait for a gap? What about you, George?
What an excellent question.
Where did he get the inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I posed that on Twitter, it was rhetorical. But someone put the very good answer, something along the lines of, you're showing positivity to the cars. You're making a statement. I mean, obviously, it's ridiculous, but there is something in it. England's batting, I think, has veered from positive to reckless at times. And I thought you saw a really good example today with Ben Ducket's dismissal. Ben Ducket doesn't come down the wicket. It's not one of his shots. I mean, remind me of the times he's done it before. He actually made a point after his excellent 150 a couple of weeks ago that he can't come down the wicket. So he sweeps. But today he came down the wicket and he reminded himself perhaps of why he doesn't do it. But I think the point being, batters play shots like that when they don't trust their defence or they don't trust their game. And it looks as if he had lost confidence against Ashwin in particular, and wasn't even trusting himself to sweep. And that's partly because the bounce that Ashwin can get with the new ball. Yeah, I thought it was a really good example of someone who feels they have to attack because they can't defend. But there was a bit more to today. I thought what's really interesting is, do you remember when Kuldeep first played against England and he was fantastic? He may have taken a 6 for an ODI very early on. And England had a real struggle to read him. But then they realised they could play him off the back foot and just wait because he wasn't very quick. But he's gone away and improved and added a few Ks to his bowling. And now they can't sit on the back foot like, Johnny Bairstow did and wait, because he's too quick and he'll catch them. So that, combined with the fact that they're still struggling to read when he's going to bowl the googly, makes him a real handful. But yeah, you saw in the way that England played today, you saw microcosms of the series several times. Johnny Bairstow's batting, for example, it was a really good cameo in ODI cricket. He scored something like 68 runs in 49 balls in the game. He looked fantastic, but it's not enough. You don't win test matches with little cameos like that. And that's what we've seen from England all series, really, little glimpses. And it's not enough. They're not combining the rigor that you need to win test matches with the flair that they clearly have. And India are far too good, even when they're missing a few players, to allow that sort of to let them off the hook.
Well, you can read all of George's takes from the end of this series and across the summer, of course, by subscribing to the Cricketers digital channels for just $3.99. You can do so in the video description. Let's move on to our next question. Bob Bamber asks, are Stokes and McCullum arrogant enough to not learn anything from this series?
I don't think they're arrogant. I wouldn't want to say that at all. I don't think Stokes is arrogant at all. I just think they're committed to a plan. But I think Stokes will say one thing in public, but he's an intelligent man and he'll be thinking about it. And I think he'll learn, and he'll be very worried by his own batting. McCullum, I don't know. I don't know that he will be so bothered by what's happened. I mean, I don't think he'll change the way he does things, but I might be wrong. I wondered whether we might see a Kevin Keegan moment with him. Do you remember Kevin Keegan? Was it after they lost Germany?
When he resigned in the tunnel?
Yeah. I don't think we will, by the way, but I just crossed my mind that I wonder if on a level he might be thinking, do you know what? I'm not quite up to this. He should be thinking that, or he can redouble his efforts and change a bit. But as I remember, Glenn Hoddle was watching, and in the first half of that game, he decided, my football knowledge isn't fantastic, I have to say, and he decided that he didn't have an answer to what Germany were doing and how England was struggling. And so at the end of the game, I think they only lost 1-0. I might be wrong. He said, I don't think I've got what it takes. And I did wonder. It wouldn't completely shock me if Brendan McCullum did that. But why would he? I mean, he's about to go home for several months. And, he's only got, I don't suppose he will. But there is lots to learn. And I'm sure that Stokes in particular will think about it and adapt. You don't want him to completely change the way he plays. You don't want any of them to completely change the way they play. As I've said every day, really, none of these things are binary. But it would be nice if they learned a little bit, yeah.
I did wonder which Kevin Keegan moment you were referring to there.
I didn't mean to love it.
Like growing a perm or yeah, I'd love it if we beat them. Or anything like that. But maybe one of the more conservative options as far as Kevin Keegan's career is concerned. Let's move on to our next question from Ankit, and it reads: Gileswell hit more sixes than the top 7 English batters combined. Will it inspire England to play Jai's ball?
I think it's just nice that England have inspired a youngster to play just like them. I mean, he's obviously a fantastic player, and he doesn't really play like England because he does attack from the start sometimes. Certainly, he went after the spinners very early, but he plays the seamers on their merits, really. And, he's a modern player who's obviously got T20 pedigree, but he's... I think I said yesterday, he's earned the right to play his big shots for the fact that he can also defend and rotate the strike. But yeah, he's obviously, 22? He's a special talent. It's interesting that, how much he's grown during the series, 712 runs or whatever it is. And he's obviously a very young man. I think Ollie Pope is 4 years older than him, has played 35 more tests or something. And yet it's still being spoken about as if he's young and promising. Don't know, he's played something like 45 tests.
It was interesting that he was interviewed again at the close, and for all the confidence that he shows when he bats, he is still a very unsure, very quiet individual. I say at only 22. I've never seen him look more uncomfortable than when he was being interviewed at the end of play. One of those an interesting contrast with the way that he plays when he's got a bat in his hand.
Yeah, well, I think maybe we forget sometimes how young they are and how difficult it is to do that part of their job. It is really difficult to have a microphone stuck in your face and expected to be eloquent. Desperately tough. And the other thing that's been nice from an India sort of top order batting point of view was the way Shubman Gill has impressed increasingly as the series got on. Was it 200s and a 90 in the last 3 tests? And I thought he's looked really, really classy. Obviously, there'll be different questions to answer for him on quicker, bouncier wickets and what have you, but there's a lot to like there. Yeah, so that top 3, obviously Rohit's nearer the end than the beginning, but 2 of that top 3 are young and very promising and scored a lot of runs. So that is even more encouraging for India.
Let's move on to our next question. And Jane Timon asks, Stokes just wants to entertain, but I've not found this entertaining. How have you, George? And I'm just wanting them to win.
Hello, Jane. I thought the first 3 or 4 tests, 3.5 tests were very entertaining, to be honest. This one was very one-sided. Even losing by 400 didn't seem as one-sided because there was a moment in it when England had an opportunity, but this innings loss felt very one-sided. I don't know that Stokes is as much committed to that sort of entertaining remit as he makes out. I think there's more nuance there, but he doesn't want to, we know that several times he's said things to the media which he doesn't really mean, such as he's not going to play in the World Cup, and he always was. He just wants the questions to go away. So, but the general point you make, Jane, I think is right. There has been a lot of emphasis on entertaining, and actually, what do we mean by entertaining? It feels like the whole ethos of English cricket in the last few years has been to try to win over people who don't much like cricket. So you've got the 100, which is fine, trying to attract a new audience. Nothing wrong with trying to do that, but you don't want to alienate the one you've got. And it did feel at times in this series similar with the way they're playing their Test cricket. So quite commonly, people will say to me on Twitter, it was a lot worse before. Isn't this fun? Why can't you just get off their backs and enjoy it? But you don't just have to enjoy cricket for the 4s and 6s. I mean, go way back, as English supporters anyway might remember, Mike Atherton's rearguard 180 in South Africa. So there can be beauty in defiance and defence. I don't think entertainment just has to be 4s and 6s, does it? Equally, it doesn't just have to be flat wickets. It can, it's certainly lovely to watch a series in which spin has been prevalent. And, if you don't enjoy watching Kuldeep, for example, maybe cricket's not your sport. So it's, I think that the point she raises is it's all become a bit simplistic, a bit binary. And they should unashamedly accept that there are times when you have to grind it out a little bit. And I'd have loved England to have been more ruthless in those moments, and they were just moments when they had opportunities to be on top. But I think, Zach Crawley, I saw improvement there. I thought he was trusting his defence more. Limited returns, but he was England's top scorer of the series, I think, for a second successive series. So that's progress from him. But yeah, I basically agree with the premise of Jane's question. I would love to see England unashamedly just grind out some results sometimes, yeah.
Does Duckett's dismissal say it all for the performance and the respect that England have for fans travelling or getting up at 4 a.m. to watch? It's not just good enough. That's from Tom Vickers.
Well, Tom, I don't agree that it was disrespectful. I don't. And I think they do respect the travelling support in particular. I think they really do. I just think that he was found out. I think I said this earlier already, didn't I? I mean, he came down the wicket because he had stopped trusting his conventional game, which is full of sweep.
Yeah.
You don't see Ben Duckett come down the wicket very often, and certainly not to Ashwin. So I don't think it was about disrespectful. I don't think it's about arrogance. Not really. Not with the players. I think that maybe sometimes they cocoon themselves in these attitudes to try and build themselves up, give them the confidence to go and play. But I don't think there's anything there that's really disrespectful to either the opposition or the supporters, particularly people who travel a long way to watch them. So I've got plenty of criticism of this side, but I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that they were disrespectful of their supporters. I don't see any evidence of that. It was just a bad shot. It was a bad shot because he didn't trust his defensive game.
Yeah, disrespectful to the 4 a.m. cafetiers. Neil Varane.
I mean, you could argue neither of us are getting up early tomorrow, are we? Well, you might be.
No, to be honest, I'm fully in favour of Ben Ducket playing however he wants. Speaking of which, Neil Varane, slow bulk runs from Cook and trot style batters might have been useful, statement ?
Yes, of course. I mean, Ben Stokes said a few weeks ago that Alistair Cook wouldn't gain selection in his side at this stage, but I don't believe he means it for a second. I don't believe he means it. I think what he's doing is sending a statement to his current players to say, this is how much I back you. So I think there's probably a context there which we have to take into account. Having said that, the selection has veered one way in particular, and even the accumulatory players are sometimes trying to do things that don't come naturally to them. And I think Ollie Pope is a really good example. But I of the modern players, I wonder if, Sam Hain, Josh Bohannon are potentially worth a look. It seems like a huge leap to go back to sort of Dom Sibley. But if Dom Sibley is banging out hundreds for Surrey again next season, then I'd absolutely sort of consider him. Not that opening is the big issue, but, there's an issue at 3. It could be that Crawley or Ducket are at 3, couldn't it? But anyway, there are players who could maybe complement the attacking style of some of the others. And I think you do need a balance. And England obviously didn't get that balance right in this series.
Yeah, and I guess you're right that, the messaging is all about to their own players, but I guess also to say that group of players who are trying to get in or back in, that's how you're going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to do it playing.
That's a good point. Now that you make a very good point right there. They are saying that, aren't they? And so players are being encouraged to be ever more aggressive, and the selectors seem to only be looking at players who are more aggressive. And I think again and again, I'd want to go back to saying it might be there's no combination of England players that could have won this series. I think I said that in the preview. India are very good. They're particularly good in their own conditions. And I'm not sure that, we can talk about selection and Liam Dawson and what have you, and I would have picked it for what it's worth. But do I think the result would have been wildly different? I mean, I don't think England would have won, no. So, there are times when you just have to give credit to India, and I thought that, the way that Jaswal batted and the way that Kuldeep bowled, I mean, the wicket of Zach Crawley in particular is beautiful. It makes Crawley look a bit loose, maybe, but it's fantastic bowling. Earlier in the series, there were moments when Bumrah looked outrageously good. So, you do have to give a lot of credit to India and accept that there was a chasm between the sides, really. One thing about that, I would just, when people say to me, as they are, the best side won, it's very hard to win in India. I mean, when did it get to the stage where it's just accepted by England and England supporters that they can't win in India or Australia? And if they do accept that, why go? Why are England playing 5 Test series in India and Australia? Absolutely fine for Australia and India to play 5 Test series in England because those are competitive series, as we know, generally anyway. But when was the last time there was a competitive 5 Test series? I mean, even 2012 when England won was a 4 Test series, I think. So you go back a long time. I think it is, I've got this in my piece, but it's something like 29 games England have played in Australia and India since the start of 2013. They've won 2 out of 29 and lost 24, I think. So you have to question how they have got to the stage where that is the expectation, because that's a pitifully low expectation. And personally, I don't think that's good enough. So I would change things. But I said after they won the Ashes, you need structural change. And I remember Ashley Giles saying, you're going to be having the same conversation in 4 years. And he's right, we will. I bet you after the next Ashes, there's a review. And they won't be able to blame Silverwood and Giles because, and that's the other thing. It annoys me increasingly when people compare the results of this team under McCullum and co to the results immediately before them, because there was a COVID thing going on and England were completely broken. They didn't have a cat in hell's chance in Australia. They barely had a couple of nets. It was just a joke of a tour. And I know people won't like to hear that. I was only making excuses. Don't give a toss. I was on those tours. It was rubbish. There was no preparation. They only went to fulfill the broadcast deals. It was all about money, as English cricket has been very often. And so very often we seem to take the simple choices, the easy choices that I know we'll have a couple of charismatic leaders and everything will fall into place. It's bollocks. It's reverted to normality now, hasn't it? It's the same win-loss ratio as before COVID. So actually, you've got to do more than pick a charismatic leader. You've got to look at the structures. And we know, I love county cricket. We know that the county schedule has been marginalised to an unhealthy degree. And I think if we got back to basics and gave the counties the love and respect they deserve, and the county game the love and the respect they deserve, that would be the first building block of a stronger England Test side.
Moving on to our final question, Pratish Raj asks, do you think the team led by Cook in 2012 played a better brand of cricket?
It wasn't a better brand of cricket, it was just better cricket. But of course they did. I mean, yes, of course. But it's not, is it like for like? I mean, they had Cook, who had a fantastic series. What did he get? 3 centuries in that series? Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Kolkata. I think so. You had KP, who played one of the best innings I've ever seen in Mumbai. You had Trott, who made runs in Nagpur and Kolkata. There were a lot of good players in that side. And then, of course, you had the spin attack, Monty and Swan, and Jimmy Anderson at his absolute best. So it was a very, very good side. And maybe they just caught India on the turn just a little bit. Full of good players, that India side, but maybe they weren't absolutely at their best. A combination of things, but they did. And they played some outrageously aggressive cricket. KP's innings was brilliant. They're a completely different side. I should say before we end, fantastic questions throughout. Really grateful for the way people have engaged. Thank you.